Hello, everybody. This is Bill, and you're listening to the Sit Rep Podcast. I'm back here with Big Jim Riskany and Gaz from England. This may sound a little different than what we've been doing normally, and that's just because I have moved into southern Florida and we're setting up equipment, so we're using our backup studio at this point until the rest of it gets here and gets set up. We have a big show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about what's new in the hobby. We're going to talk again a little bit more about the direction of the podcast. We kind of hinted that on our live stream the other night. We're going to talk about the update to the Tabletop 13 Hours game. And then, more importantly, we're going to talk about the state of the industry itself and the big news that came out this week. So, joining me today is Gaz from merry old England. Gaz, how are you today?
I am full of a cup of tea, so I'm in a good form, shall we say. Good form.
Excellent. And then, joining me, now my co-Floridian, hey, I like that, is Big Jim Riskany, who had to suffer a little setback with air conditioning for a little bit. How are you doing?
Welcome to the dark side. You are now a Floridian. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Hello, everybody. Yep, this is Riskany, and happy to be here as always.
Good. All right, guys, we got a lot to talk about. Why don't we talk about the easy part first, and that's anything new news-wise. Does anybody have anything that they would like to kick it off with?
Yeah, I could kick off some.
Okay.
So, Sarissa Precision, they have some new terrain out that I think you might like, G. They've done a tile railway set. So basically a little set of trains and railway tracks that are perfect for the likes of, sort of Wild West settings. Mm-hmm. They've got like a desert color theme to them, but you could spray them and do what you want with them essentially. But they're interconnecting tile pieces, so you can change the layout of the track for your games by placing them on the table, or you could make a whole table from the tiles clipped together.
Nice.
So yeah, it opens up some new interesting scenery for those people that are getting into the likes of, Wild West seems to have had a surge, doesn't it, in the last 12 months, I'd say.
Yeah.
We've seen some really nice miniature ranges, some Kickstarters coming through. So, yeah, it's good to see that it's getting some support from the bigger terrain manufacturers.
Most definitely. Anything else, Gaz, yours?
Yeah, I've got a few here. I've got about three more.
Okay, go ahead.
So Jim will be happy to know, because I know he loves this range when it comes out. Flames of War, Jim. The Soviets are getting some love at the moment. So I'll let you take us. I'll list them out, and you can tell us a little bit about them if you want. The SU-76 light batteries. They've made it to the tabletop now.
That's one of those vehicles that you really should always have at least a couple of. Extremely common. Not very good, but I mean, I'm sure the models are great. I always want to caveat that. Like say, hey, the so-and-so company came out with a new miniature about this thing. I'm like, oh, that tank is terrible. And I'm like, wait. I'm sorry. I mean, like the tank, like historically, not the miniature. I'm sure in fact, maybe you guys noticed this too. The worse the tank, the better the miniature. Have you guys noticed that? Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's cool. We've got the Katyusha Guards rocket batteries. So, old favourite, that's the back of the trucks, isn't it, where they have the banks.
Stalin's organ pipes.
Yeah.
Or Brocade, depending on what side you're on.
We've got the Valentine Tank Company.
Lend-Lease. The Russians use a lot of American and British stuff, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's interesting to see them suddenly appear, because obviously their visuals are very different to their other armour types, the way the armour's made. The KV Tank Company. There's some nice machines in there. And finally, the T-70s have got their own tank company coming out as well.
Oh, yep. Cool.
So, I mean, they're still expanding this range by the look of it, and obviously it's quite a large range to put models to.
Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming there's some T-34s in there?
I think that, they were already out with the starter set they did for the Soviets and the follow-up initial releases, as well as a lot of their infantry heavy stuff. I'm not sure if we've seen that much horse and cart drawn Vickers machine guns yet, but that would have been early war, wouldn't it? More than anything. In addition, a favourite of all of ours, I think, is Deep Cut Studios. There's some new mats out, one of which is quite good for some pirate action. They've got sort of an island map map to come out with multiple islands dotted around and almost a light blue sea. So I think you could probably use it for if you were going to do sort of 15 mil or smaller Second World War. I think you could do a bit of island hopping on it, have some landing craft, and make it into an interesting game as well.
Yeah.
On top of that, they've done a series of 3 mats, one of which I think was already out, and 2 more that have been scaled specifically for Blood Red Skies. So aerial combat and those types of things. They've got one that's desert, a countryside-based one, and then one over the ocean. One thing I've been seeing, because I look at the Blood Red Skies forums quite a lot, people are starting to do more and more of the Pacific stuff, using scaled aircraft carriers and ships, so they can do bombing runs and torpedo runs, as well as fighter aircraft intercepts. So it's certainly growing into a more Pacific setting, all through Midway and all the way across, really, with the Japanese facing off against the USA. Some really nice boards, some really nice models coming out of that.
Now, when you said scaled, what are you referring to? I mean,
so they're kind of deciding, they're slowly printing out different size ships to see which ones look correct when you've got the aircraft from the Blood Red Skies on the board. So they're scaled right down to being very small, as if they're doing their drops from 1,000 feet or, whatever sort of height they want to set it at. And there's rules now in the game for doing stuff like bombing runs and torpedo runs on ships and land-based anti-aircraft as well. So there's the rules to support it, which is really nice.
Nice.
Final one. Oh, go on. Sorry, Jim.
No, I was just going to cut in super fast. 2 quick points about those mats you were just talking about. I think you mentioned the desert one, followed immediately by a water or a sea-based mat. That's actually pretty cool, because I would say between 60 and 80%, we'll just call it 3/4. 3/4 of the air combat in the North African desert didn't take place over the North African desert. Almost all the air war that took place in that North African Mediterranean theater was, in fact, over the Mediterranean. Airstrikes in that campaign didn't go after tanks like we normally do. Oh, there's German artillery over there calling an airstrike. Almost all the airstrikes in that theater were going after, on more of an operational scale, they were going after enemy shipping, because supply was killer. I mean, supply is always killer, but in the desert, it was 10 times more important even than it normally is. So almost everyone's air power was being thrown against enemy shipping, Italian shipping, British shipping, and the Germans had aircraft also going after British shipping, trying to, shut down the other guy's supply line. So if you're interested in air combat in North Africa, oddly enough, there's going to be no sand on your board. You're going to be out over the ocean. And at Historicon, they had a couple tables like that. It sounds weird if you've never seen that kind of table, where it's, okay, your planes are 1 to 300 and your ships are 1 to 1,200. They're obviously grossly out of scale. If it's done right, it really works. Historicon, like I said, had a couple Pacific-themed tables based on that. And it actually kind of, torpedo bombers, maybe not so much, because torpedo bombers, when they release their torpedoes, are like at 30 feet.
Yeah.
But dive bombers or level bombers, certainly. Yeah, those ships are going to be tiny by comparison, just because of it's almost like a forced perspective effect. I think it really works.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I like the fact that now you could essentially put the desert map up to an ocean map and play fighters coming in against fighters that were land-based in response, and have the transitions over the water as well as land-based targets.
Yeah, that coastal road was a big target too, so you could have like a split board, like some on the water, some over the sand as well.
And you can even make a twist to the modern, because now it makes me think of Iron Eagle. Over the water, into oh yeah. Sorry, just my wondering.
Showing your age there, Bill. Not lying. Iron Eagle. Louis Gossett Jr. at his finest.
Which is funny because I've been watching the Karate Kid, the new one.
Cobra Kai.
Yeah, Cobra Kai, and what's his favorite movie? Iron Eagle.
Yeah, Iron Eagle.
If you guys have not, anybody who's listening who's not seen Cobra Kai yet, you have to watch it. If you're
It's an interesting show.
It is actually really good.
It is an interesting. I don't give a damn about Karate Kid. I'm not a big martial arts guy. I never watched those movies growing up. But as like a writer or as someone who does this kind of stuff, like making the villain suddenly the protagonist. I mean, especially in season 1, the hero and the antagonist have more or less switched places, but not like jarringly so. It's not like a WWE heel turn. You know, it's kind of like, hey, one guy was successful and made it, and now he's a little bit of a douchebag, and the other guy, he kind of peaked when he was 18, and now he's just trying to get by, and he's trying to recapture a little bit of, you know, it's interesting. Just as from a writing's perspective, it's actually kind of key. It's actually kind of cool. Kind of neat.
It's actually well done for, you know, a Netflix. It was originally started as a YouTube video.
Yeah, I was gonna say it started off as a YouTube original, for crying out loud.
And I mean, and now they've definitely got a season 3 coming, which is great because season 2 ended. Well, I'm telling you what, it's really good. So yeah, I just heard from Chris. Chris will join us here shortly.
Cool.
So yeah,
I've got one more if you want, G, just to fill a bit more time as well. So the last one, Jim will be probably quite interested in, of all of us more than any, I think, because it's the Warlord are releasing a new bolt action campaign book, and they're going to be releasing the D-Day British and Canadian sectors. So that'll be covering everything from the landings at Gold, Sword and Juno through Caen into the Falaise Pocket. And it'll also give you full lists for the Canadian Army as well.
Well, it's good that they're going outside the typical, you know, Gold Beach and all that stuff that we know, and going to the other beaches and areas of D-Day. So it's nice that they're expanding outside what most people are familiar with. So
yeah, especially with a force that is probably similar to, obviously being an allied force, the equipment and kit will be very similar, but I think a lot of people will be able to use what they already have just to represent, to play test out the Canadian military.
Yep.
And like you say, their transitions and where they went will be very different to where the Americans and specifically the British went, and how they attack those areas. Will be new history for me, for example, because I've not read up on that.
That'd be awesome.
The Canadians, that force changes a lot, obviously, as they land more and more troops. It grows. In its final form, the famous British formation in Northwest Europe, 21st Army Group, was pretty much half Canadian. 21st Army Group was 2nd British Army and 2nd Canadian Army. So even like 21st Army Group, like this is a little bit later in the like Scheldt Estuary, moving down into northern Holland and into northern Belgium. Battles around Antwerp. By the time you get into that part of the war, it's like literally half your British force, from like the 5-star general's perspective, not like the bolt action perspective, but from way up high, is actually British. Is actually Canadian. Canadian infantry, I'm not 100% sure about 28 millimeter scale, because that's a kind of a big scale. It's almost big enough to see like shoulder flashes and so on and so forth for people who get really into their hobby. But Canadian infantry, by and large, looks almost identical to British infantry. So you can probably kind of squeak by with, like Gaz was saying, pre-existing Canadian forces. The only thing that gets really different for Canadian forces is some of their vehicle equipment. I think reasonable people may disagree, but I'm still kind of convinced that Canadians had the world's first true APC. I think they called it the Kangaroo, where they basically took an old Sherman chassis, kind of took off the turret, even if it was damaged in combat, or they just built it this way, sort of hollowed out the inside a little bit, and they had an actual tank level armored, and kind of an APC. It was like back then in World War II, APC was code for half track. It wasn't like a Bradley or a Warrior or anything like a BMP, anything like when we think of APCs today. And the only time I've really played Canadians on a serious war game was in surprise, Panzer Leader. And Canadian infantry in Kangaroos are friggin' unstoppable, man. It's like everything has an armored attack class. Everything has an 8 defense factor. I mean, your infantry have a Sherman armor. And man, Canadian infantry is actually kind of badass.
Yeah.
I mean, from a tactical perspective, just because their equipment. I mean, I'm sure not every division had these APCs, but compared to what most people called an APC in the 40s, i.e. a half-track, an M3, an SDK, the 251s that Gaz painted earlier. I mean, yeah, technically it's armored, it'll stop machine gun fire, but come on, it's a half-track. No, the Canadians had like basically turretless tanks that they were using as APCs. So yeah, definitely a very interesting army and an interesting addition to the range for sure.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That's good. It's nice to see them expanding outside again. What everybody knows, and there's so much to, in this case, World War II that doesn't get coverage because it's not the popular thing or the, so it's nice to see them covering other areas as well. So, anything else, Gaz? I have a few pieces. If you're done.
No, that's me done.
Okay. The first one is that Tim Spakowski, sorry, tripped over my own tongue there, from Footsore North America, posted some images of his MRAPs or Cougars or whatever there are. Let me see if I can find them. They're really turning up some really nice, it's an LATV, modern stuff. And he keeps on turning it out, and now it's available in the UK, is my understanding, through Footsore UK. So if you check out Footsore Miniatures website, you will see the new armored vehicles and those are in 28 millimeters, so those look really good. Nice detail. Whoever painted them did a really good job, so they look really good. Weapons platforms on them. The next one.
Do they have like different options for the weapons platforms, or is it pretty standard? I mean, at larger scale Humvees that I've built, it's like, oh, you want a Humvee in 28 mil or 20? I usually gave moderns in 20.
Yeah.
You want a Humvee in 20 mil? Okay, cool. Here's a menu, and I get like a 2-page PDF document because there's like 50 different kinds of Humvees with different turrets, different machine guns, different loadouts.
Well, according to the website, it says it comes with. It's a 1/50th scale model, and it comes with 6 turret variations.
There we go. Yeah, that's what I was suspecting.
Yeah, so that's nice that they include all the variations for you. So that's good. Something else that really piqued my interest is Albino Raven Miniatures. Now this is a Patreon subscription, and you get STL files to print. And right now they have some modern ones that they're doing. Seated soldiers. They had they're doing some kind of up-armored Humvee that they'll be doing. So it's like some of the other ones right now. I'd be interested to see what comes out of these. I don't know because some of them look a little future. It's different. Check it out if you are interested in printing your own minis. But they did post some modern guys that are like seated, so you can put them like in the back of a vehicle or something like that. So, but that's a Patreon thing. Another thing, Plastic Soldier Company announced their next 2 releases for Northag. One is a British Spartan Patrol and a Soviet BDRM-2 Conquer section. What can you tell us about that one there, Jim?
The BRDM-2?
Yeah.
I've never, in the Condor section, I've never really heard of that. I'm assuming that's sort of like a Russian or ex-Soviet kind of an airborne unit of some kind, but I don't know. Okay. The BRDM-2 is the successor, obviously, to the BRDM-1. This is a 4-wheeled, I don't want to call it an APC because it really doesn't carry a squad of infantry, to my knowledge. Most times you see BRDM-2s like we would see like LAVs in some of our more Western militaries. Again, it's not really an APC, 4-wheeled, lightly armored, very small vehicle. It's almost more of an armored car than an APC of any kind. It's usually either a command vehicle or sometimes the Soviets used to put either like communications equipment in it, make it like a command vehicle, some sort of like communication relay station. They used to put a rack of AT-5s on there back in the 80s, and damn, they were dangerous. And Arab is really worse. I've seen BRDM-1s with AT-3s, AT-4s, and even AT-5s in more modern settings put a whooping on some Israeli tanks. Yeah. Israeli tanks just roll on the board like they're the shit. We're the IDF, we're the tank, we're the mailed fist of the IDF, and oh wait, the Egyptians have discovered missiles. Oh no. We've had this conversation before about how vulnerable tanks may or may not be to missiles. Historically, specifically Yom Kippur War 73, you would see missiles, because the Israelis had almost all tanks, at least the forward edge of their divisions, and they used them badly. And as a result, tanks used badly are horrifically vulnerable to vehicles like the BRDM 1 and 2. Little vehicles like 1/20th their weight, but they're hulled down with this little rack of AT-5s like on top of the whole roof or whatever. And sometimes I think they also put like lighter racks of anti-aircraft missiles, SA-9s, SA-13s, I think, SA-7s, almost like your van pads kind of stuff. I think there's a version of it called the Avenger we sort of have, where they basically put stingers on like a little revolving turret on top of a Humvee, a little like that. Like an improvised light-wheeled anti-aircraft vehicle. But you won't see like companies of these things carrying like motor rifle companies into combat. It was more of a support and command, sort of a four-wheel armored car, for lack of a better word.
Nice. All right. Moving on to a section that I am so excited about, and I have to get my hands on them. This is not helping me stream down some of my work pile, but Empress Miniatures has come out with a new line, and it's called The Wild Bunch. It's Western guys, and these are based on movies. There's Boss Spearman, Charlie Waite. Those are from the Kevin Costner movie. Oh, I just watched it the other week, and I can't remember what it's called now. Boss Spears was oh my god, I'm totally drawing a blank.
Oh, you're talking about Open Range.
Open Range, thank you. Postal Weight, yes. Open Range. So they have made them in mounted and in the gunfighter pose. They've made Everett Hitch, which was...
They're all from that movie?
No, Everett Hitch is from Appaloosa.
Gotcha.
So
I was going to say, we totally just skipped over Blue Bonnet. What was his name? Robert Duvall's character. He kept calling him boss, and right at the very end, before the big gun battle, he's like, "I'm not going to meet my maker without knowing your given name." It sure as hell ain't boss.
Yep, it's Blue Bonnet. Blue Bonnet.
His name is Blue Bonnet. And he points his gun at him. He's like, "You better not ever tell a soul."
You're right. So yeah, you have them. You have Charlie Waite. You have Everett Hitch from Appaloosa. You have Liberty Valance miniatures, which is awesome. You have the Baxter Boys, which were the antagonists in the Open Range. You have Tom Donovan, which is the John Wayne character from Who Shot Liberty Valance. And then you have Virgil Cole. Who is Virgil Cole? That's the bad guy in Appaloosa. The protagonist.
So the only Virgil I know from Old West was the older brother in Tombstone.
Virgil Earp.
Yeah.
So no, but it's nice to see these. These look really nice. Like I said, Western stuff is Gaz reiterated that it's coming back this year. I don't know if people are just digging up old Western movies and stuff, and they're like, "Hey, that sounds cool." Or maybe people are actually listening to me about Westerns. I don't know. Who knows?
That'd be scary if they were listening to you,
Oh, wait a minute. There's somebody who just snuck in.
There's a ghost in the machine.
I snuck in.
Well, welcome to the show, Chris.
Yeah, this is what happens when you have to get your neighbors to move so you can get a truck in the yard.
I see are you pouring concrete for new sidewalks?
No, gravel right now.
Oh, just gravel? Okay.
Yeah.
I saw you doing the forum, so I was wondering if you were going to be doing concrete work.
No, just gravel right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you were digging all that stuff in the snow?
Yep, I was.
Damn Canadians.
Storm.
Only in
we
Canada
weren't expecting
would you do
snow.
Well, welcome, Chris. Good to have you join us. We were just doing some updates and news of things that have been posted, and since you posted 90% of it on the Facebook page, you're our social media guy. I was talking about the Empress miniatures, the Western guys.
Aren't they nice?
Oh, they are really nice. I like how they've actually. So my question is, how long is it before they're no longer available because somebody does a copyright infringement thing? Or is that not applicable in the UK?
I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
Lots of companies do miniatures that are similar to characters in movies and books all the time, and they don't seem to get hit with cease and desists or anything.
Okay.
So
well,
they should be okay.
I'm gonna have to definitely grab all these guys before they disappear. But yeah, hopefully they won't. And that'll expand the range. But I'm very excited that Empress is doing some westerns. So that is
Empress
awesome.
is killing me right now. Just the amount of cool stuff they're bringing out.
Yeah.
Between Paul Hicks and Paul Eagleston with at Empress, they're just bringing out tons of stuff.
It's just crazy how much that they've done. That's all So, Chris, we just went over the Empress miniatures. I went over the North Ag miniature releases. I talked about Albino Raven miniatures a little bit.
Yeah,
and
I'm hoping to print those
Are
this week. The Albino, yeah.
Did you back the Patreon?
It's more of an ultra modern.
Okay.
It's not like current modern. It's more set in the future kind of thing, I think.
Gotcha. I'm looking at the. I'm gonna reserve my opinion for you to actually print them because I'm looking at the picture of the two guys sitting on ammo crates. It looks like, and their weapons look very bulky.
Yes, they do.
So
yeah.
Now there's a big discussion about this, and Gaz, join in as a former miniatures creator, and Jim as well. You know, from your standpoint. I know several people in the industry that I've had this discussion with about weapons and creating them with miniatures because I've had some people complain those weapons look so out of scale, and then you have other people, you know, that say actual scale miniatures weapons look underscaled, and a famous, I consider him famous, owner of a miniatures company. You know, should I say his name? I should, but anyways, I'm an owner of one of the miniatures company. Told me once that it's very difficult to create weapons in true scale when you're creating miniatures because of the fragility of the weapons, and they end up breaking quite often, or they don't cast properly, and people get dissatisfied with it. So that's why you'll see some weapons that look overly scaled. I don't know what your guys' opinions on that. But
well, I used to cast for a company. And I'll tell you, if we got to make a mold, if we got a miniature that their rifle ends, like the barrel end, was too small and too thin, it would not either cast properly, like in the spin casters, or it would be so fragile when it was cast that it would just break off.
Yeah.
So I've seen sculptors oversize, because when you do the casting and the molding process, you usually do pre-production where you're casting a whole bunch of the same miniature to put into a production mold.
Yeah.
You don't want that to happen. So they would oversize pretty much all their weapons, just so they knew that when the casting process came about, it would cast properly. And now you've got 3D sculpting, and people complain about how it looks too big. But when you go to the production end of it, you have to have it that big just so it would go down a size so it would cast properly.
Yeah.
And hold up to, handling. So that's what I know. Yeah.
The average barrel at the end of like your 5.56 assault rifle, depending on whatever make and model you want to talk about, is about, not the handguards, not the forward side assembly, not the upper receiver, like the actual barrel is what, like 15 millimeters wide at the outside, something like that. And if you a 1 to 100 scale mini, like a 15 millimeter mini, that's 0.15 millimeters. We're down into the tenths of a millimeter now. That, even if it does make it correctly, by the time it gets to you in the mail, it's going to be broken. There's just no way. I have seen some plastics do it well. I have some 20 millimeter plastics where the weapons are not heroically scaled at all. And if it's like a soft plastic, okay, it won't break. Now it just bends. And every single miniature, you have to give it that hot bath You put it in really hot water so the plastic gets a little bendy again. You can kind of bend it back into shape. Now your barrel's crooked. I tried to do a few of them with a very lighter touch. And again, at 0.15 millimeters, that plastic melts instantly. And let's just say a lot of my AK guys turned into AKSU guys. Oh, it's the carbine version. It's fine. I ruined a couple of guys doing that. Yeah, I totally get it. I think that the trick is when I've seen so many companies say, oh, okay, full pass, I totally understand. You have to make the weapon a little bit bigger. But rather than just change the thickness of the weapon, especially its barrel and front side assembly, like the delicate parts, they just scale up the whole weapon. Now it looks like everyone's walking around with those Mauser anti-tank rifles from World War One.
Yeah.
They don't just make it thicker, they make it thicker and longer and wider and the whole 9 yards. I'm like, okay, no. That guy looks like Vasquez from Aliens. I'm like, no, that's weird. Other than that, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think you can get away with it a bit more when you push in 28-32. But even then, if your product's damaged when it arrives to your customer, they potentially are going to get back in touch, and you're going to have to package another one and send it, and it's all that cost is then laid on you. So therefore, yeah, most people scale them up. The other thing you can do is intelligent posing. So when we did our range, it was true scale. So what we did, what was called some intelligent posing. So we would support that part of the miniature in a different way. So 2 hands on the weapon, tucked into the body. You can almost, up to a point, touch another area and use flash to support it until it arrives, and then the person that gets it snips the flashing off, or put in an extra support mechanism and design that in for the print production, so that when the guy gets it, it's not just a bit of flash between 2 areas, it's actually a supported element where they just snip off a small area.
Yeah.
And if the company that's doing the production is experienced in that, they'll often get back in touch with you as a designer or as a gaming company to say, look, I love what you've done with it, but that's not going to work. You'll normally catch that with the CAD designers and such quite early on, to be fair. Most of those guys now have been doing it for a long time, the ones that generally get used. So they have a good perception of what's needed, even down to when to use square holes and pegs rather than circular. Circular allows you to pose the model, but some stuff you want to be in a specific angle, go in a specific way. So for those, you'll use a different type of peg mechanism so that it's specifically very difficult for it to look wrong, because you can only turn it 90 degrees at a time if you're using a square peg. So as soon as you put it in the wrong way, you're like, oh, not that way. Turn it 1. Oh, there you go. That's right. And it looks like it should.
Awesome. So that's that thing. Any other news from your standpoint, Chris?
I'm just trying to think. Can't think. It was kind of a slow news week when I think about it.
Yeah.
Empress. Just going over the things in my head. I think that's about it that I remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Let's change gears a little bit and do a quick update direction for this podcast. The first thing that we wanted to talk about is our next project. Well, before we do that, let me give you an update on our last project. The video has been in the can for a couple weeks now for the tabletop game. It is a lot of files. We're talking almost, 300 gigabyte of video files that I have to combine, render down, and then edit. So it's taking a little longer than I originally planned, just because of the way we filmed it. So bear with us. I will try and get it out for this Thursday show. And in the middle of that, I did move. So, there's that too. So it's not forgotten. It's not dead. I gave you guys a quick synopsis on the quick live show we did the other night. And let me apologize for what happened during that live stream. We had a couple people that jumped in who thought they were extremely funny on YouTube and were making some very inappropriate comments. So we had to stop the stream and restart it. And I did put an update on there. So it is coming. You'll get to see all the glory of the action that happened on the tabletop. Talking about that, the guys, we've all been talking about where we think the podcast has gone, where it should go, what we think, and we're kind of wondering if the Pirates idea is not the best choice, or there's that much interest generated as we thought there would be with the podcast. We want to make this an open discussion, so we're hoping you guys will put comments below. No matter what platform you're listening to this, or send us an email on Facebook, or just message on Facebook. Have we wandered away from the purpose of this podcast? Do we need to concentrate more back on what we originally were, which was moderns, or should we look at our next project being something along the lines of some of the bigger, more popular genres, whether that's World War I or II or Napoleonics, Civil War, yada, yada, yada. We'd like to hear your ideas, or do we stick with the Pirates thing? Because, as Gaz pointed out, he did put out suggestions, was looking for suggestions when he was doing some of his brew reviews, and we really didn't get too much as far as input. So, I don't know, guys, what do you think, with this conversation?
Yeah, I think we definitely I want to focus, if the guys that are watching stuff like View and a Brew and updates want something specific that's not Pirates, for example, I don't want to force that onto them.
Right.
Because that's not something they want to watch. And I'm about to go through painting at least 6 individual models, which is 12 weeks, if I do every other week. So that'd be 3 months of content they're not interested in. And I can put my time in other places where they would want something. Even if they're not really that interested in painting, let us know. Because if that's an area we can refocus into organizing more live games or more historical, stuff like Jim does for Ops Center, anything like that, we can focus on what people are the most interested in, and therefore make the channel better for the people listening to it.
Yeah. The poll we had out earlier this year about, hey guys, what do you think our next big focus should be after 13 days to 13 hours, did legitimately come out as Pirates. And we've been trying to put out some pirate content, while 13 days is wrapping up. Just to kind of make sure that, hey guys, we heard the poll, we put out the poll, you guys were cool enough to actually respond to the poll, and we are listening. We're not ignoring you. We're not, we haven't forgotten about it. Now the response to what we've seen on Pirates so far has been very, very small. And I won't reveal obviously specific numbers; those are internal. But the number of votes that we received in general on that poll is actually quite small compared to our overall subscriber base, and the margin by which Pirates won was very, very slender. So for the sake of 1 or 2 voters, basically, or a small number of voters, we're starting to think maybe we shouldn't shift the focus of the whole channel, because we've got hundreds of people on YouTube, hundreds on Facebook, hundreds on we're all over the place. And if we sort of focus the whole team's effort on one area, I understand that people voted for it, but again, it's an extremely slender margin. So I think we're just starting to think, well, maybe we should do Pirates along with something else, or I don't want to put Pirates on the back burner entirely, but what else should we be doing? Because while legitimate, the data that's supporting an overall shift almost exclusively to Pirates for a month or 2 or 2 months is really slender, and we don't want to risk alienating or boring the other 99.5% of our audience.
Exactly.
I think that how we've been doing it, where we all, depending on what's on our hobby table, and usually it's pretty interesting stuff. Like Jim's always got some cool games going on, so that's good content. Gaz is always painting some really cool miniatures, and sometimes it's all over the place, but that's interesting. Gives you variety. We've got games going on. I know my table's always covered with different things every
very true
week, every day. But I think just sticking to one subject for all of us is maybe not a good idea.
Yeah.
I think splitting it up is a better idea.
I
agree.
It
gives people more things to look at that's not just all the same content for a month or months. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think by us all concentrating on one thing, we're turning off interest to people who are not interested in that subject. And then, with all the things that are available elsewhere in social media, they'll go elsewhere to look for things, and it would limit the growth of the channel and opportunities if we're only concentrating on one thing, and that's not in somebody's wheelhouse. So I agree, Chris. I think we should be all just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, to garner interest from every which way, every direction. So I agree, and I think we're all pretty much saying the same thing.
I think that kind of leads us to our next inevitable question.
Yes.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of which, and a little bit of what. Once again, we are reaching out to our community, guys.
Yeah.
If there is a specific, or semi-specific thing, like I put out American War of Independence stuff. I don't know how popular that is because it's a kind of a small, niche within a niche kind of a subject. Should we maybe pivot more to Napoleonics if you're a Black Powder fan, or American Civil War, as opposed to American War of Independence? World War II, we do hit. So far, I've been trying to avoid the immediate Northwest Europe thing. I know we just did a Hurtgen Forest battle, but that's a battle that very few people have heard of. I'm trying to pick on the little stuff in World War II that not many people have heard of and stay away from the Saving Private Ryan Band of Brothers thing, which is great, but literally everybody on planet Earth does it. Right. So we're kind of trying to stand out a little bit. If you guys want to do, San Mariglis or something for, okay, let us know, and we'll try to come up with some content about that. Yeah, we're basically just asking. Okay, we're not like completely dropping pirates by any means. I mean, you guys did vote. We're not like invalidating anyone's election results or anything. Not to get too political, but in all seriousness, like what else should we do at the same time? We don't want to make this a one-issue channel.
We better not drop pirates. I bought a whole bunch of pirates just recently.
There you go.
And I backed a Kickstarter, too.
No, yeah, again, Jim is 100% right. We're not saying we're done with pirates. I think we just need to make sure we're not focusing on just one subject, because everybody has different interests, and we want to be able to kind of address a lot of different, areas at the same time. And we all have our interests, we all have our specialties, and I think, we should be working on those strengths. So, I mean, we took a lot of time with 13 days, 13 hours, but even with that, we still had an intermix of other things. So, we just want to hear input from you all to see what you think and where you'd like other areas to go as well. So, I think that's what we're going to do. Like, Gaz probably has projects he'd love to do paint videos for that aren't pirate related, and he probably felt, well, I can't do that because it's not in our, theme now. So we want people to be interested in what we do. We want the people doing it to be interested in what they're doing and not feel like they have to do one other thing. So that's how I feel about that.
I can jump around a number of game systems just from stuff that's in the dreaded pile of shame, to be honest. I have Germans for bolt actions sat ready to go, and that's the 1939, 1940 stuff. So we don't see it as much as the mid to late war. I've got Flames of War that we did the 251, but I've also got a Tiger sat there, well, a Tiger platoon, Panzer IVs. I've got more infantry. So again, we can chop and change between them. What else have I got? Blood Red Skies. I just picked up some Ju-88Cs, heavy fighters, so we could revisit that because I know that's quite popular at the moment. I've got some feudal Japan miniatures, so, and that's just the stuff I could think of right at this moment. For rules, I've got stuff like Saga and other games that I want to get stuff for.
Yep.
But, they're not my main focus now, but could become that to do content for the Sit Rep podcast.
I love Saga. That's a good game. Damn it,
So yeah,
Gaz!
well, we could even down to if people just want to do, sessions of the, Roman legionnaire, Napoleonic, infantrymen, lancers, just a specific. I'd just like to see how you would go about painting that and have that as content. Germans, Second World War, British Second World War, American Second World War, just how to go through. I mean, there's a load of content already out there for a lot of these things, but, if people want it, I've got no drama picking some up and painting it.
Yeah, yeah. We all, like I said, we all have our interests and stuff, and we should definitely work on that. I mean, Chris has been producing all kinds of different stuff. Heck, you've been doing those French and Indian War minis that you printed. So, yeah.
I got slowed down until I got glasses, but yeah, I was still
it's
painting.
amazing what you can do when you can see.
Yeah.
I want to push Jim into a historical area he's never even looked at, just to ruin his day. I think I don't know, the
historical period I've never even looked at before. I don't know, man. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying the odds are against you.
Yeah, I think how the Aztecs and the Ottomans,
Aztecs and Ottomans never fought each other.
No, but like two periods where it just doesn't come up as often as sort of the mainstream.
Okay, cool.
Maybe even stuff like how the Persian Empire became what it was, because we talk about obviously Alexander and Philip, and how that built into Alexander taking over Babylon. But
that's more about how the Persian Empire fell than how the empire started.
Yeah, it's always mid rather than, well, how did these all fall under a single leader? So I think there's lots of options for us to push into historical wise, but it depends what people want.
Yeah, we're talking about Persians and their rise. You're talking about fights against let's see, who was right before the Persians? That would be the Assyrians, and before that the Babylonians. So yeah, you're going way back. Hittites and Hyksos, and even the Egyptians before that. To I think the Battle of Megiddo is like Megiddo is often like considered, at least last time I read, like the beginning of military history. It's the first time there was a battle big enough where somebody bothered to write down what happened afterwards. So I think it's the earliest, generally accepted to be the earliest battle report. And that's ironically where the term Armageddon comes from, if I'm not too far off on that. Megiddo is a city, I think, in what is today northern Israel, if not Jordan, somewhere around that area. And we're talking about, this is where the first battle took place. Battle in air quotes. Obviously, people have been throwing rocks at each other for millions of years, but the first, someone bothered to write it down, the birth of air quotes, military history. And according to some sources, not to get all super religious here, but that's where the last battle is supposed to take place. It begins and ends at Megiddo, which is the root of Armageddon. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to explore back there. I don't know a lot of details about it, but I have messed around with Ancients using TSR's battle system, version 2.0, doing a lot of that desert stuff, way like ancient stuff. But again, I would have to. I do have some sources on it, but I would have to do a little refresher course for sure.
Well, there's a challenge there. All right.
Is everybody asleep now? Is that really not putting it up?
Oh, what?
Yeah, right.
Goes off there.
Oh, Lord have mercy. All right, so let's talk about the big news this week. There was a large announcement made this week by one of the bigger wargaming media outlets. It was a gut punch to me, to be honest with you. So I'd like to get everybody's impression and see if it's a precursor to more consolidation. Remember, I talked about consolidation in another show, and I just thought we would do something, talk about it a little bit more. So, for those of you who are not familiar with what I'm talking about, on Tabletop, formerly known as Beast of War, announced, Warren, one of the owners of it, him and his brother Lloyd, made an announcement that they have sold OTT to Wayland Games. which
Sounds familiar.
thought was a huge shocker. Because if you know the history of Beasts of War,
So I'm saying they actually came from there, didn't they, originally? Sort of?
yeah,
In
pretty much.
2013?
Yeah. When they were still in England, they became they were associated with Wayland Games, and then they were doing some pre-box unboxings of GW stuff, I think it was. If you go back, you'll find the video somewhere. Warren made the announcement of how, GW threatened to revoke distributorship of Wayland Games, and so then Warren felt that they couldn't be creative like they wanted to be, so they have disbanded from Wayland Games and moved back to Northern Ireland, and that's when Beast of War became what it was for the last several years. And how quickly the table has turned, and now they've gone back and have sold the company or the rights or whatever, however they're doing. I don't know the actual details to Wayland Games. So I was like, wow, okay. I know a lot of people did not take it well. They were very polite about it, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people were extremely concerned. Based upon, I guess, history. I've never done business with Wayland Games. My only knowledge of Wayland Games is what I knew from Warren and discussions we had about what had happened many years ago. So I have never done business with Wayland Games. So I have no firsthand knowledge. But it seems like there's many more people who've had business dealings with Wayland Games and have not had positive experiences. So they're very concerned of what this means for OTT. Your guys' thoughts?
I think this is inevitable that smaller companies are going to be, with COVID and everything, lockdown in Europe and everywhere else in the world, it's going to happen. These smaller companies are going to get bought up by larger companies.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be a bad thing right at this point, I'm going to reserve judgment.
Yeah.
I've heard things about Wayland Games, and I do remember them moving to England and then moving back and working out of the shed in Warren's backyard.
Yep.
I remember that. I hope for their sake it goes really well.
Yeah.
But I'm going to reserve judgment until we see a little bit more and see what happens.
I agree.
If I was Wayland Games, I wouldn't, rock the boat too much. Because the community will come down on them real hard. And it's a really large community.
Yeah.
Oh, the community will just flee. I mean...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
Who are you? I don't know you. This is our house. We built it together. We're the community. You may have bought OTT, but you didn't buy us. Quite frankly, fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
I would be, if I were Wayland, I would have a very light touch, I guess, at least initially. At the same time, they did buy it. They did pay for it. It's, of course, theirs to do with. I would just, take it slow.
I think that's probably all baked in, to be honest. I think it'll pretty much, for the foreseeable future, run. They bought it for the reason of what it is and who listens to it. And those people that may have gone away initially will probably come back, I'd like to think, when not a lot changes, if nothing changes.
Mm-hmm. Has there actually been like a drop in membership, or?
I don't know. We couldn't really tell, I suppose, because it's all subscribed, isn't it? So,
yeah, we don't know the actual numbers of subscribers.
I don't think it has on YouTube, but that's not the same as what... Well, it's Roll Together, isn't it, that they bought, I think? Which is when you order something from the store as well, it comes under Roll Together. I think it's a multi-part name company now. I think it was Beast of War on tabletop so Beast of War from the original. I think it then split into OTT being the sort of the video media content, and then Roll Together, I think, is the store. is how it's worked. I think that they've bought everything. It's a part and parcel, as well as staff and location, and not bought the location, but the things are going to stay, at least like you say, initially as they are. Interesting thing, out of interest, I just jumped onto, I don't know if you guys use it much, it's called Trustpilot. It's like a review site.
No.
I don't know if it's a UK specific thing. So when you put in Whaling Games and reviews, you'll see there's a fair few where they're in the mid-3s, but Trustpilot's one of the larger ones that sort of amalgamates a lot of information these days. So every time I buy something from, say, on Tabletop, I get a, do you want to fill out a review from Trustpilot, because they're linked. Currently, Whaling Games, from 18,409 reviews, have a 4.8.
Okay, well. Is that out of a 5-point scale or a 10-point scale?
Yeah. I think it's out of a 5-point.
Okay.
Yeah, 5-point. Excellent. So 88% are excellent, and 9% are great, and the rest are 1 or less.
Okay.
For the bottom 3 stars. I think with many things, we generally hear from the people unhappy more than we do from the ones that are. When it comes to Wayland, I know a lot of people that have had problems with them, including myself, over time. But you put your bad review up, and then maybe nobody else has got something you want. You buy it from the next time, you have no problem, so you give them an okay review or a good review. So based on the sheer volume of reviews there, yeah, I mean, there are people that are unhappy. There's at least 1% that are in the bottom 3 categories. There's 3% of people from 18,000 plus that were unhappy in some way or found it to be poor or bad. But when you've got that type of volume going in and out as well, it's difficult to gauge what you're going to get from them. But as a parent company now, I think they run a number of different sub companies and companies that own companies, and they're a lot bigger than most people realize, where they've got a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, shall we say.
Yeah. So this leads to the question, do you think it's going to hurt the creativity of OTT? Because now they have new bosses to report to, and I'm assuming those people are not going to be identical, I should say, in their vision as like Warren and Lloyd's vision is. Do you see a curtailing of the creativity or a different direction based upon the business model that Whaling Games has?
I don't know. Wayland sells a lot of different items. Like, they sell a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So we might see a little bit of change, but I don't think it's going to be a great amount.
I think it'll stick to what's in stock. I think it's almost like having a small Northern Ireland branch that does also media content. So I think it'll stay. I honestly think it'll stay pretty much as it is. I don't think there'll be that much change, because you can only stock so many items. There's no point in pushing stuff that they don't stock there, because then they'd have to get it in to sell, because that'll be on the media platform. So it'd have to be physically be there. They'd have to be shipping stuff backwards and forwards just to show. I honestly think it's not really going to change at all.
If I can dare to be optimistic for a little bit, like really optimistic, this isn't normally my bag. I'm usually the grouch. But in all seriousness, might it get a little better?
Okay.
And I don't mean that in any way as a slam against what OTT's been doing lately, but OTT's been putting out a lot of GW stuff.
Yeah.
Lately, a lot of GW stuff. I don't know much about Wayland, but I don't think they are, or maybe they are, correct me if I'm wrong. Are they like, a GW, I know they're not a subsidiary, but like a GW, kind of a puppet. I mean, that's probably the wrong word. I don't think they are. Like we were just saying, or like Chris was just saying, they sell a lot of different stuff. And if this pulls a little bit of the business pressure off of Lloyd and Warren, maybe this will allow Lloyd and Warren to kind of enjoy the more hobby side of it and creative side of it a little bit more. Because let's face it, we haven't seen a hobby lab on OTT in a while.
Yeah.
That Lloyd used to do. We haven't seen. I don't watch a lot of. I haven't watched a lot of backstages lately, but I know have we seen a lot of Warren meets Matt. Have we seen a lot of projects? We haven't seen the Let's Play. For a while. That's mostly been like Jerry kind of stuff, Jerry and Justin and John. Lloyd and outside of the weekend shows, we haven't really seen a lot. In fact, have we even seen vlogs? We haven't even seen like Warren used to do a lot of vlogs. In some of the boot camps I've been to lately, there's almost been like a sense of exhaustion. Like there's so much going on, and there's like so many worries, especially with COVID and everything else like that. Might this maybe just me trying to see the thing half full? Might this be taking a little bit of the pressure personally off of Lloyd and Warren, and maybe allowing them to almost like reconnect with the community a little bit more?
It's possible, yeah.
And maybe I'm just trying to find a glass half full where there's not enough water. But yeah, I'm trying to remain optimistic as best I can.
No, yeah, I mean those are all very valid points, and I'm looking at their website right now. While they have a very robust Games Workshop section, they do have just about every other miniatures war game out there.
I just counted them. They currently have 125 different war games listed.
Wow.
That's huge.
So they are by no means are they bracketed at all.
And they sell Lego.
It can't be that bad. They sell Lego,
right? I mean, so again,
like every single hold on. It's one thing to pull up some numbers. Every single show recently has been at least 50% GW.
Yeah.
Come on.
I think that's probably. I mean, a lot of the recent vlogs have been actually Conquest because they're running a Conquest campaign at the moment, including.
I honestly have no idea what that is.
It's a fantasy miniature.
It's a fantasy. It's a fantasy miniature. It's Parabellum is the host company, and they're stockist of that product range and have been for a while, but they're just now moving into. So Forum are doing vlog interviews as they build their force. So they're doing a slow grow campaign digitally this time, similar to what we did in the Flames of War one they did. When it comes to content, John's put out how to paint, using contrasts for each of the different ranges that the four guys are doing. So there is stuff trickling in and out. There is interviews. There's a lot of hobbies. I think Jerry's kind of took over from Lloyd when it comes to doing. He recently did how to rust up panels on armor, how to do streaking. So that type of stuff's mainly coming from Jerry now. But when we think back to the last couple of boot camps, that's where Lloyd generally jumps in deeper. When they had the Blood and Plunder, he did the big board for that. When we did the 40k, him and Warren were doing the vlogs of how they built the Apocalypse table for 40k. When they did the Star Wars Legion, I think John painted up a Fallen 8080 as a board. And stuff like the Let's Plays.
Yeah,
I think
that was
like a
year and a half ago was the Fallen.
Yeah, but COVID was February, so there's like 7-8 of that months where they were either not able to be in work or so limited. Lloyd, I don't think, has actually been in the office since COVID
he refuses to go in.
So yeah, he's not going to be producing that type of content. And there was a long period where, I think some of the other guys where it was mainly those that were close. Maybe I think it was obviously Justin because he can jump out of his window, slide down a pole and land in the OTT guy. And I imagine Warren had some reservations with, a family and stuff as well, and potentially bringing it home for a good amount of time as well. So I think it's difficult to judge during this particular climate how they've been producing, but at the same time, 40k just ran optimistic. So 40k just ran into 9th edition, which is obviously massive. So if they have been doing that content, it's probably not a bad thing because that's what is the biggest focus in the last 3 or 4 months at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like you say, I think you're right, Jim. I think they'll have the budget for doing certain things, for attending events potentially, and I think they'll have to pay a lot more to get somebody to stick a needle in Warren and B.A. Baracus' ass onto a plane to get him anywhere. But maybe they could sneak somebody up on him to get him overseas to some of the bigger events, but I doubt it. I think it'll still be the same guys going doing the likes of SN and Gen Con and Historicon, and I think it'll be interesting to see where they go.
Yeah, we'll have to just see how it goes. But again, I hope for Warren's sake and those guys' sake that they're able to adjust to the new owner's vision. Because to Gaz's point, I could see them saying, Warren, you need to go to this convention because you are the face of OTT and you need to be there. Well, I don't like to travel. You have to go. You know, I get when you look at coming from a person who's owned businesses and has managed multi-million-dollar budgets. When it comes down to what it affects your budget and what is going to affect your income, you do things that you may not want to do things. And if you can't, or the person you're trying to get to do it doesn't want to do it or won't do it, you get somebody else that will. So, you know, and I'm hoping that's not the case here, but I'm just talking from a purely financial business point of view. These people have invested money, obviously, in buying this company, and, you know, they're going to want to return. So it's not a goodwill thing. Let's be truthful about this. This is not a goodwill. Oh, Warren, we're buddies. Let me help, buy this, and we'll yada yada. They're expecting a return. They're expecting a return on their investment, and as long as everything's hunky dory and they're going along with their program, the new owner's program, I see things going well. If for some reason there's some hiccups or the new owners have a different change in vision, and the guys don't agree with it, we could see some bumps in the road. So it's a scary time. I've been through 3 mergers in the last 7 years. So I kind of have a fresh perspective on what it's like to merge into other companies. You don't see changes coming, and all of a sudden, we were told my last merger, when we merged with another health system, we were told, you guys are doing a great job. You're the most productive hospital we have. We're not going to change anything. And literally within a year, the entire senior leadership was gone. So some by choice, some by not by choice, because they just didn't like the direction things were going. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. We all think that OTT is part of our family. It's a community, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and if you're not being productive and you're not being financially responsible, there will be changes. So we'll just have to see what happens. I'm hoping for the best. It's just kind of a scary time. So, yeah.
Do you think why do you think Wayland bought them?
They wanted a media outlet that was already established.
Yeah, I think I was just looking to see if they do streams or anything on, just a quick search on Google, and they seem to be very, very low key when it comes to video or any type of media content as such. I suppose one of the good things these days is, with the world being what it is, supply media content to then be filtered through. That could be a worry, in that if they focus them as all media and want more, they have guys go to all these different events to film and then belt feed that into what has become their media section.
Yeah.
And we lose content that way because the time's now monopolized in a different way.
Yeah.
But I imagine a lot of these scenarios have gone through the guys' minds.
Well, and it has. And to be honest with you, like I said, when we were going through our last merger, we were told, oh, no, things aren't going to change. But then a lot have changed in a year. I mean, the hospital senior leadership changed. The CEO of the health system changed because the stockholders and the board didn't like the direction it was going. I don't know what kind of company Wayland is, if it has stockholders or, however it's set up. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and you're in business to make money. And if a certain aspect of your company is not making money and it's costing you money and it's becoming a burden, or you don't like the direction it's going, and these are the board of directors or whoever's at the top decides, that's not what I want, this is what I want, that could change everything, and it could totally change the face of OTT. So, but that's business for you, I mean, at the end of the day, life goes on, and businesses need to change and grow, or they die. And so it'll just be interesting to see what happens.
Heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff there.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah. So I don't know. And
I don't.
for us who've been actually part of Beast of War, and I'm speaking for Jim and myself. And I know, Gaz, you've had quite a close relations with a lot of guys, but from our point of view, actually content creators, and us obviously here in the U.S. creating a lot of content and covering the conventions and everything for them. I sent a message to Warren. I said, "What does this mean for the U.S. side?" And I never got a response back. Because we weren't opposed to possibly covering some conventions for them. Still, and now that we've had this big break because of COVID and everything, but who knows? I mean, the future is, at least for the little people, and I'm talking about us at this end, is unknown. So I don't know, but that again, this is all part of consolidation of the miniatures game. I think the golden age of wargaming is over. And I know it's probably an unpopular opinion because, for years, the last several years, Warren, if are a follower of Beasts of War, or OTT, has said we are in the golden age of wargaming. In the last 2 years, you're seeing the bubble burst and you're seeing correction, just like after the .com and some of these other ones. When we were in the golden age of the .coms, you had company after company coming out left, right, and coming out with all kinds of stuff and ridiculous IPs and things like that. And then all of a sudden the bubble burst, and then you saw a lot of stuff going away and consolidating, and you've seen that over the last 2 years. Look at it. You have Asmodee, who's taken over CMON, who's taken over Fantasy Flight. You've seen other companies just fold up and go away. You've seen other companies get bought out. Drop Fleet got taken over, Carnivale, Wild West Exodus. A lot of consolidation. So it's I think the golden age of wargaming is over, to be honest with you. It doesn't mean less opportunities for players. It just means the creativity. I think Kickstarter has killed wargaming in a lot of ways because who can keep up with all the crud that was being thrown at you on Kickstarter? And unfortunately for some companies, it was very hard to keep up or compete with some of the bigger companies. I mean, honestly, I'm friends with people from CMON, or the old CMON, not the new CMON under Asmodee, but does CMON really need to go to Kickstarter for every game that they produce? Honestly?
I agree with you. I agree with you so strongly, I don't agree with you. Not only has Kickstarter killed the golden age of wargaming, and we've had this conversation before, I would say the golden age of wargaming was never here.
Yeah.
It wasn't golden. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff coming out, but a lot of it was trash. I'm sorry, but a lot, not all of it certainly, but a lot of it was not
good.
And
they're small companies.
If you need proof, it's all being consolidated. It's all failed.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to talk 2 points here. The first point is there have been some terrific games that have been produced by small companies, and I'm speaking to Gaz, who produced a wonderful game that that's how we met Gaz, when he created that game with his friends. And unfortunately, because there was so much out there, I don't think he was able to build the audience just because of dilution. It's not because he didn't have a great game. You had a great game. You had a great play mechanic. You had this great game. I just think there was so much choice, and you had such a limited budget when it came to promotion and everything else. It wasn't able to grow like it should have grown. So
yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, we were very lucky in some ways because War Cradle Studios picked it up.
Yeah,
and they've run forward with it, but we never had the PR platform. Even in the modern day, we couldn't get it everywhere to be seen, and we could only really attend shows in the UK, and we didn't have the budget to fly to Europe and USA to build the brand in different areas that would potentially have been more productive.
Yeah.
But we had our fun with it, and we didn't lose money on it, which was nice.
Yeah.
And when it's moved forward to sort of in a nice way to the right people.
Yeah. So but again, it's a great game. We have our copy. We treasure our copy. But the second point I want to make, and this is what I'm going to relate to, quote unquote, the golden age, as Jim pointed out, of wargaming, reminds me of the Atari age. Do you remember, Jim, when Atari came out? It was such an awesome system, and then everybody's just started making garbage. For
E.T. was
Atari.
not that bad of a game. E.T. was not that bad of a game. No, E.T. was terrible. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it was mostly it's a close analogy. I don't know if it's 100%.
Uh-huh.
I think what happened with Atari specifically was that they were a little too loose with their licensing.
Yeah.
And too many people were coming out with games that were just terrible in quality.
Yeah.
I think the E.T. game, which probably unjustifiably shoulders the blame for killing off the entire system or the entire platform. It's not entire. It was already dying. I think E.T. just kind of finished it off. But I think they crushed out that game in like 5 weeks, which for a video game, even back in those days, is absurd. I mean, you can't build a game in 5 weeks and have it be even close to a,
playable.
A good, marketable product or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I just read an article this morning about did E.T. kill Atari? So it's kind of funny.
That's the reputation it has.
So
it's where they literally came in and they stole their own product in the middle of the night. They've loaded up a couple 18-wheelers just full of all their tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these cartridges. And it was an urban myth for the longest time until, this is kind of an absurd term, but this is the term they use, a modern archaeologist. I call it someone who just drives around in landfills, but a modern archaeologist literally went on a hunt, did investigation, did research, and found the burial site.
Yep.
And finally confirmed the actual urban legend where they found all these things buried.
Yep.
Somewhere out in Arizona somewhere.
And do you know that they now have covered it in concrete or asphalt so you can't get to them?
Yeah, because now it's a thing. People who are like really bored, they don't want to go on a real vacation, so they say, let's go to Arizona and go on a treasure hunt for an ET cartridge from 1984 or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of the same thing though. It's just like, there were good games that came out between 2005 2015. This golden age. But there were good games. The problem is, for every good game, there was 9, if not outright bad, just like really put together fast, put out on Kickstarter. Let's make a quick buck and see what comes out there. So
yeah.
If you were a smaller house and you didn't have a gigantic, marketing budget to really put your stuff out there above all the noise, it's just going to get lost in the noise. It's just too many radio signals.
Apparently, I just looked, and apparently these once buried Atari games were dug up and sold for $100,000.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It's literally life. But what literally killed the system, 30 years ago, is now like worth, I guess, weight in gold or something. I don't know. I don't get it. So I mean, there was no Kickstarter back in the 80s, but I totally get the analogy that you're trying to draw there, as far as literally just oversaturation of the market with too many quickly produced and, I don't want to say low quality, but kind of low quality stuff, and it drowns out and takes too much wind out of the sails of the really good stuff that's out there, which is the real shame.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guys or the houses that might not have made it or were acquired by other companies or whatever, because they couldn't really stand on their own. I mean, I think his name was Dave, the guy who did Drop Fleet Commander, Drop Zone Commander.
Yeah, Dave. Yeah.
This guy. I mean, I never met him personally, and I never bought into Drop Fleet Commander.
Nice guy.
The passion. The guy built like a 1 to 100 scale model, or no, a 144 scale model of like basically a Star Destroyer. It was like 20 feet long or something, or his universe's version of a large capital ship. Yep. I mean, the passion this guy had for his project was, as someone who kind of makes up little projects of his own, I could see it. I could, hey, he's one of us. And from what I heard, he just got like burnt out. He just couldn't do it.
The Kickstarter he just couldn't keep up with.
Yeah,
it really came down to.
I think we're going to see more historics as well, because as rule sets for historic have become quite agnostic in many genres, and miniatures produced by a lot of different companies, because copyright's not really an issue when you start producing miniature ranges for historical. The introduction now of, affordable 3D printing, as Chris can attest to with his production facilities like Santa's Workshop.
China West, as I continue to call it.
China West.
I still call it that. I'm not walking away from that.
That's funny.
and we're going to see, I'm a part of a couple of patrons. We're going to see, I've not really seen that much as a specific historical patron that's going to be producing different eras and different models from those eras yet.
Yep.
But it's coming.
Yeah.
And when it does, I'm signing up to it. There you go.
I might have found one. I'm about to subscribe to his Patreon today, just so I can try out some models.
There we go. So, and I think that's going to be, I mean, it's such an easy way to not have a footprint. So you don't need bricks and mortar. You can set this type of thing up as a CAD designer or a company or a group of CAD designers from home, which a lot of these guys are doing now.
Yeah.
So your footprint's small. Your tax returns are based on the number of people you have in the company as that are producing. So that reduces, again, not needing to package and send, and everything else reduces the amount of people you need in the company as a whole. The quality any problems can be addressed digitally very quickly. So, if you have a misprint of, not because of you, but because the design is such that the wall or the roof doesn't quite line up due to a slight snafu, they can literally just update that. I'm seeing now the patrons are using a host STL file site. So it's called, the one I use is Titanforge, and My Mini Factory now host their files. So I have a My Mini Factory account, and each month my files that I wish to download can be downloaded from the patron specifically for that company, but they also get updated to My Mini Factory where I can download them from there as well. So they're beginning to share the server burden and the storage burden of, what are gigs worth of STLs, which will soon start to add up year in, year out.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see a change in many ways of how game design is. I think we talked about Atari, and we talked about, there's a great program on Netflix called High Score that starts off with Atari and moves all the way to modern day. And it's quite interesting, and it shows how we as humans don't stay focused on one thing for very long generally. We tend to move into different areas and different wants. So high scores weren't in a game. They became a thing in a certain era. Therefore, you had world championships with people trying to achieve high scores. And then that transitioned into things like first-person shooters. And so we're like magpies, aren't we? Let's be honest. We've all got our piles of shame based on things we liked and saw and things that we bought that we may never get to. But for that fraction of a moment, we thought it was a good idea because that'd be great to do.
Yeah.
Very few games, like video games nowadays, even have a score. Score. It's like achievements and trophies and unlockables and microtransactions. There's all this other stuff. But yeah, the general attention span, especially in the internet age, is measured in milliseconds. I mean, you click, okay, now you click on something else. Oh, you get a Facebook post, you get an email, and you've totally forgot what you were doing before you know it, the day's over. And you never think about that first thing ever again. Especially on the internet, you have the old expression, one chance to make a first impression. Damn, dude. In the internet, that's squared, times 100. You have to get someone's attention immediately and hold on to it for as long as you can. And again, for companies with very limited marketing and outreach budgets, that can definitely be tough.
Yeah, and I think you can transfer that to ourselves as hobbyists and wargamers as well, in many ways, because there's always something else we want to do as a project. I mean, Jim, how many armies have you got? Literally thousands of models.
I honestly, I don't know. Yeah.
But is there another one you would like to do that you know of?
I've got 2 on the table right now.
So this is it. This is 100% what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And the problem is
I totally agree with you. Absolutely.
And it's like Chris. Chris is now finding a site that's going to potentially snow him under with historical miniatures, which is awesome. Yes. But at the same time, there's always going to be the next project. There's always going to be, oh, that looks great. And, luckily, I think he's a person that finishes his previous ones, not like some of us. I jump around so much.
I hit one project extremely hard, just for the very reason you're talking about. I mean, I'll work sometimes like on a weekend or a vacation day, like a staycation day, especially in 2020. like sometimes 18 hours. I'll sit down at like 4 in the morning. If I can't sleep, 6 in the morning, and I won't stop until 2 o'clock the next morning. And I'll be on one project. I can't walk the next day because I spent the entire day. But I'm desperate internally. Sometimes I stress myself out. I'm desperately, or at least frantically, determined to finish this project because I know there's 4 others behind it. And God damn it, if I don't finish this now, it's never going to get done.
Because I can't remember, you said you had something that was 75, 80% done. I want to say like you're some Egyptian or something from
Iraqis.
Was it the Iraqis, was it? And you kept saying to me, it's like, I broke the back of it. I literally have, in comparison to what I've done, I've got very little left to do, but I've still not done it yet.
I didn't. My brushes were not wet, not once, between the day after Christmas, Boxer Day of 2019, and like the middle of August. And in the middle of August, I got like a year's worth of hobby done in like 2 weeks. and now I'm off again. I'm like, because I'm doing something else. It's fine. I'll be back to it. But the trick is not to let it go for more than half a year, I guess. You know?
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget we can do these in bite-sized chunks. We try to do the full final force rather than build up in, lower pointage games that we could play with people and learn the rules easier because we've not got as much on the table.
Well, that's very true, yeah. Build and learn in little steps, certainly.
Well, any final thoughts, guys, before we close out the show today? It's been a doozy, that's for sure.
I'm looking forward to having KFC for tea. Not sure how that sits with all the rest of you. For those in the UK, I'm having gravy, which means you Americans have no idea what I'm talking about.
What do you mean? What's gravy?
Well, ain't biscuits and
I
gravy.
know what you're talking about.
And see, Chris knows.
I know what gravy is.
See, I literally wish I had a camera on this. I have biscuits and gravy for breakfast, literally on my desk right now. I still haven't. It's almost 2 in the afternoon where I am. I still haven't finished breakfast.
Wow.
But, yeah.
That's like your painting projects, Jim.
Exactly. I didn't wake up.
You're not putting it on the biscuits. You're not putting it on the biscuits with a brush, are you?
You know what? Biscuit gravy really clogs up your airbrush, guys. Definitely reduce that shit down before you try to put it through your airbrush. It doesn't work.
Gosh. That's hilarious. All right, guys. Well, at that interesting note, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining us. Make sure you comment on everything that we've talked about. We need ideas, where you'd like to see the podcast go, what subject matter. Throw us a curveball. Here's a good contest. I will send a prize to the most original idea on how to stump Jim.
Oh, for crying out loud. I never claimed to know everything about everything. It's gonna be an easy
So it has to be historical, warfare related, some period in the existence of humankind. Now we're not talking Adam and Eve type stuff. Come on, guys, give us a little bit of wiggle room. If you can come
post
up with
Battle of Megiddo, it has to be after the Battle of Megiddo. At the risk of putting Chris to sleep again, it has to be. That's the birth of military history. It has to be post Battle of Megiddo.
Okay.
If you don't know Battle of Megiddo, look it up.
I don't know what it is. I'll have to look it up myself.
I have been looking up Inuit wars while we've been chatting. By the way,
Inuit wars. You mean the Eskimos? Yeah.
Yes, they went against the Indians in the Americas.
15mm walruses. Here we come.
And moose. Don't forget the moose.
Yep. Those thrown penguins are going to be deadly.
It sounds like Jim's next chapter of the Battle for the North Pole. That's coming up here soon.
I know, and I've already said I'm not doing it.
You're not?
No, I literally post that challenge on OTT. I'm not doing it this year.
Oh,
if someone else wants to do it, someone else has to. I've done it 6 years in a row.
Bah humbug. It's
somebody
like
else pick up the torch. Yeah, I know. So somebody else can do it. Traditions are social things.
All right.
Traditions are social things. Someone else has to do it.
All right. So the contest is we will send a prize. And Paul B got his prize and sent us a picture of his Northeg prize kit. So
sweet.
He's very, very excited.
Awesome.
I asked him to put some pictures on our Facebook page of his assembled stuff. So, who can come up with the most...
Yo! Bill, on that,
Yo!
we still have a competition running that people could still comment on, don't we?
Oh,
I'm not 100% sure that's right.
Because the last video has not gone out.
It has not gone out.
But haven't you renounced the results?
I did renounce the results.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry.
That was my only
Good
question.
catch. Good catch, Jim. Good catch.
All
right.
Nice try, guys.
Oh, well, that means somebody's won something. They just don't know it yet.
That's right.
That's true.
So I will actually put to make it even more interesting, and you have to watch the tabletop war video, the game video. In the middle of the video, I'm not going to say exactly where in the middle of the video, I'm going to post the winner of that contest. So you're going to have to watch the video to find out who won.
Wasn't there also something about like a mystery miniature on the table?
Yes.
That's what I was about to bring up. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I thought we were talking about the contest where we were talking about how it was going to turn out, like the results.
Yes. The winner of the contest who predicted the outcome, I will post that person's name somewhere within the video. And then you are right. The other contest, obviously you can't comment on it because you haven't seen the video yet, is there's a mystery miniature on the table that does not belong in the scenario. Once you identify that miniature, we will pick that winner as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, all right. So there's your contest. Stump Jim.
No, that's very easy to do. But okay, so because I'm not really that smart. But whoever has like the most original idea. Yep. It has to be historical though. Okay, let's not have Martians versus Soviets in 1912 or something. I mean,
what? No. It can't be the Horus Heresy.
Oh God! You just ruined my day. Yeah, cool.
All right, guys. We're going to leave it at that. So you have a mission. Thank you, everybody. And if you have any questions, comments, please make sure you post them. Keep up the good work, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.